Hi everyone, I hope you can hear me over my fan. It's another stinking hot day here today. Today's call is all about, this is my last Facebook Live. If you're getting sick of me, don't worry. We're going to be talking a little bit about how to determine the quality of your meat. We're going to focus on chicken today, but it applies to all meats without looking at the label. Because as you probably are aware, labels these days are getting very much watered down. Particularly with organics, there's a huge fight going on over in America at the moment, where anyway, hydroponics is now considered organic when there's no soil involved, and that's kind of the central piece to organic farming. Anyway, I don't want to get off topic on that, but what it means for us is that we can no longer look at an organic label, and this is going to continue to get worse if nothing changes, or a free range or a grass-fed label, and know exactly what that means. So you need to be able to be, I guess, aware of what else to look for. And sometimes, obviously, if you're traveling or if you only have access to a supermarket, then you have to just go with the label. Accessibility kind of sucks for a lot of people, which is that's just the way it is. But yeah, today we're just going to be talking about what else to look for. If there's no label to help you, or if the label is not telling you everything you need to know, what can you look for in the bird to determine if it's a good nutritional, product, and not only just the quality of the meat, but the health of the animal, which tells you a lot about the way that it lived, and that's also very important as well. So if you have been enjoying all the topics I've been ranting on about for the last few weeks, this is a kind of, I guess, a good taste of what is covered in my What to Eat program, which is starting on Tuesday night. And I know I keep saying it, but it's the last one for 2 whole years, which is a very long time. I know you know that. But yeah, I don't want people to miss out, because it is a long time. And basically the way the program works is, even if the timing is terrible for you right now, if you've got a crazy March, April, May, you think I couldn't possibly add anything more in, that actually doesn't matter, because everyone takes the program at their own pace, and you might just decide to jump into the Facebook group and really just look at all the conversations that are happening, and the Facebook Lives that I do from my new kitchen, hopefully finished in a few more weeks' time, and the guest interviews that are posted in the Facebook group, and that might be all that you touch for the first 6 months, and that's totally fine. What it means is that you have access to the portal, the theory component, all the recipe videos, the archive of guest interviews. Whenever you want to do it, you might start in November looking at the portal for the next 2 years. You've got access to that until we do the next one. If you don't jump in now, you won't have any access to that for 2 years. And I guess what I want to communicate is that that's a long time to continue to shop and cook the way you're currently doing it. And you might be perfectly happy, in which case the program is probably not for you anyway. But if it's something that you've been wanting to change, that's a long time. And I guess one of the things that I'm really proud of what we achieve in the program is teaching people how to essentially double your nutrient intake, which is the tagline to my ebook as well, but increase your nutrient intake while halving your food bill. So what I'm teaching you to do is to shop smarter, to learn how to find the most nutrient dense foods and pay less for them. So there's lots and lots of tips on how to do that. Things like, but it was the way that our grandparents used to cook intuitively. It wasn't a big deal. I'm teaching you things that were so not a big deal 2 generations ago. So things like, saving the fat from your cooking and straining it out and reusing it, and there's certain types of fat that you can do that with, and where to source, biodynamic lamb for half the price of what Coles are selling the conventional stuff for. This is all possible if you know where to look. So the program is designed to pay for itself several times over in the course of a year. So you can justify it that way. And I think we've just actually added a payment plan option as well. In case I haven't mentioned that, 4 times $115. So that makes it really doable if you've been on the fence and that's what's holding you back. You can head over to the page again and see that. But I think what I'm most excited about, every year is a little bit different, but this year we've got some really amazing guests on board. We have Matthew Evans from Gourmet Farmer, for those of you who, most people would know who he is, but also one of my favorite authors, Jennifer McLagan, who wrote Odd Bits and Fat and Bones, and another one called Bitter. She is my favorite nose to tail author, and I'm just pinching myself that I get to interview her this year, so I'm really, really excited about that. So I think that's all I wanted to announce. Oh, and Diana Rogers as well, who's the filmmaker making the brilliant new film, Kale vs. Cow. If you haven't heard of that film, go over to her page and have a look at that. It's a really eye-opening concept for something that we've been discussing for years in the What to Eat program, but now we have someone taking it to the masses, and I think it's just awesome. I just think what she's doing is great. So we'll be talking about the film and also bringing in all those things that we've discussed before, but she's kind of, in my mind, someone who explains it really well, the idea about meat and climate, and that if you want to do good by the environment, you don't have to give up meat, you just have to eat better quality. So that's really exciting. So let's get into today's discussion. I've got chicken sitting everywhere. There's going to be flies. I'm just telling you that now because it's a really hot day, and I've had the doors open and we've got chicken sitting out and broth sitting out. I guess when it comes to food quality, I've always been really quite anal about food quality. I've considered myself a fairly conscious consumer. I would always look at the label, even since I was, even a teen. I was just brought up looking at labels and discerning quality that way. And I think as I've gone along, when you do more research, and I guess as I've done more research, mainly for my What to Eat program, is that you start to have a deeper understanding of the concepts and the deeper understanding of what to look for. And you no longer need to rely on a label, because the label isn't telling you anything you don't already know, other than the specific details of a farm that you may not be aware of. But really, most of the stuff that I've learned has empowered me to be able to just look at a bird or taste a bird and go, yeah, no, that's not quality. And I think that's one of my core business values with Stirring Change, is to only really promote really empowering information. So whether it's, not telling you to buy more products, but learn how to make things at home yourself to save money, to save time, to, I guess, learn information that empowers you so you don't need to rely on a label, or even, listening to your body, so that you don't have to just blindly accept what a practitioner is telling you, and so that you can work with them as a partnership. That's the way it should always be when you work with a partner, with a practitioner. Even if it's a medical practitioner, that it's a partnership and you get a say in that. So all of the things I love to teach is about, empowerment and doing things yourself and self-sufficiency. So this ties in really a lot with that for me. And when it comes to, I guess, discerning quality, you can become a connoisseur of anything if you eat quality long enough. You don't even have to know anything intellectually about the food. Obviously, if you want to become a wine connoisseur, you do. You know about the grape, you know about the terroir, where they're grown, the weather, all of that sort of thing. But if you just drank really good quality wine maybe not from day one, that just you only ever were served good quality wine, you knew nothing about where it came from or the type of grape or any of those other factors, and you were completely clueless about all the intellectual stuff, if you were served a really shoddy glass of wine, you would be able to discern that straight away. And this is what happens when you start eating really good quality food. Even if you don't learn anything about it, if you start eating, we're going to talk about regeneratively farmed meat today, that if you continue to eat that for a period of a year to 2 years, you'll eat supermarket meat and go, what is this? It's so bland. And so this just naturally happens, is because your body can start to discern the flavor, and the flavor is a reflection of nutrients, something we talk about a lot in the program. And that's good news for foodies and people who love, really, strong, beautiful flavored food, as I do. So today we're going to be talking about 3 different ways, and there's lots more that we cover in the program, but 3 different ways you can use to determine the health of chicken. And it pretty much applies across the board to pork and to beef and all the other types of meat as well. So we talked about last week that collagen is about 50% of the protein. When you look at an animal, 50% of the protein, or even us, 50% of our protein is the meat, the flesh, and the other 50% is the collagen. And I'd like to draw a parallel, I guess, with humans, just to paint the picture. That collagen, the amount of collagen found in your animal is actually a reflection of health and a measure of health. Because if you think of someone who is like someone who's aged really well, do you know someone who's still got that beautiful plump skin, the gorgeous healthy joints, they can run around playing tennis, they don't have brittle bones, they've lived a really healthy life, and into their 80s they're still flexible and their joints are working and they don't need hip replacements and things like that. that's a person who's lived a very healthy life. They're a healthy person, and that is like somewhat, it's not the only marker of health. I'm not saying for a second if you have osteoporosis, you're not healthy, but it's a good marker. And so if you know someone who has aged not so well, their skin is no longer plump, it's sort of sagging a little bit, they've got joint problems, their bones are brittle, that's a sign of reduced collagen. And so we can use it as a bit of an indicator of overall health. Not the only one, but just one. Don't mean to offend anybody who doesn't have plump skin anymore. But when we're looking at animals, it's a very good indicator of health, because I guess nutrients make collagen, and that's what we have to remember. So I'm going to come back to that in a sec. But what I've done is basically made up 3 different types of broth, and it hasn't, to be honest, worked as well as I thought it would, mainly because it's really warm today, and so everything's kind of come to room temperature. And also because when we switch to cooking regular sort of organic free-range birds to regeneratively farmed birds, really big pastured birds outside with strong muscles, we realized when I used to do a slow cooked chicken soup with the whole bird in the pot, I used to only fill it up sort of 3/4 of the way or halfway, because otherwise the resulting liquid would not be gelatinous, it would be all watery, and it just didn't taste very good. But when we started shopping locally with local farmers who are using regenerative methods, which I'll talk about, I'll sort of detail exactly what that is, what happened is that we could fill it all the way to the top and it would still be beautiful, like jelly. So we could double the water and still get the same amount of collagen, which is basically what I'm going to show you now. But what happened is when I went to do this, haven't used store-bought chickens for so long that they're so watery that you can't even tell the difference between the two that I wanted to demonstrate the difference between. So what I've got is basically, this is a conventional store-bought supermarket chicken without any particular label. I think it might have had an RSPCA label. And basically what I did to keep it relatively scientific, I know this is not the best scientific method, but I tried to keep, how long does my stock last in the fridge? Oh, it doesn't last that long because we eat it really quickly. But I think generally chicken, I try to use it up within 3 days. Depending on the quality of the bird, if I'm always more lax with my food safety if it's come from a local farm who I know the methods of, which is the only way that we shop. But I have different recommendations for people who are buying their chicken from the supermarket. I would say use it really quickly, pop it straight in the freezer, because there's more room for error in those products and the animal isn't quite as healthy. So more chance of E. coli and other contaminants. So what I've got here is, store-bought, supermarket, ordinary chicken. And this one I have, what is it? So it's from a health food store, and it's free-range organic. And this one is our local farmer, pretty solid jelly, and that is non-organic. So they're not organic, but they do use holistic management, which is, we'll talk about what that is in a second. I'm going to keep coming back to that in a minute. So what we've got is, and before we even start, I actually just want to clarify, free-range means bugger all in this country. Excuse my French. It doesn't mean anything. Unfortunately. And so what that means is that it doesn't mean that all free-range chickens are not healthy. What it means is free-range could be good if the farmer's really doing genuinely free-range, or they might be birds crammed into a shed, very lethargic, can't walk particularly well because they've been bred to have really big breasts and outgrow their legs, and they don't get a lot of exercise, so they're sort of too lethargic to go outside, and their legs don't really hold them up well to go outside. This is the reality of modern chicken farming, so I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody, but all free range means is access to the outdoors. It doesn't mean that they have to have ever seen the light of day, and most of them won't. I know that not all farmers that have a free range label are, doing that, but that's the reality of it. The label does not tell you what type of farm. It doesn't mean they've seen outside, and that's what we want. We want animals outside, not only for the sunlight, but for the grass, for the grubs, for their natural diet. They get it outside. Grains is not, it's fine to have grain fed. We need to feed chickens grain for extra protein. So grain free is not a bonus, only with cows, because ruminants are not designed to eat grains, but with birds they are. But we want the bulk of their nutrition to come from the grass, which comes from the soil, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So the only difference between organic and, well, there's a few differences between organic and free range, but there's not that much difference really, unfortunately. All organic guarantees you is, yes, they're not being fed GM grain, that's a good thing. They have slightly better restrictions, depending on which organic label is on the bird, the packaging. They will have to have access to the outside, they have to have spent a little bit of time outside. And the other thing is sometimes they'll have restrictions on how much light is used. So what they do in factory farming, which is the bulk of the chicken available to us and definitely everything in supermarkets, is they blast them with UV light to make them artificially have more daytime because that's when they grow. And so that's a very, very stressful situation for birds. Imagine like just being forced to stay awake just for growing purposes, and you don't get to sleep as much as you need to. When we don't sleep, we're not healthy either. So organic will have a slightly better stocking density and less light sort of shone on them in their life. But that's virtually it. It doesn't guarantee that they've spent most of their life outside. It doesn't guarantee much else aside from food quality, unfortunately. But it's still, you know, the best that you can buy in the supermarket. So that it's better than nothing, but it's not ideal, unfortunately. And some farmers who are using the organic label are doing wonderful things. So it's not, again, we're not tarring all farmers with the same brush. We're just saying that the label can't tell you that. This process can tell you that. So hopefully I'm not wasting too much time on the irrelevant details. So we've got, and I don't think you're going to be able to see a huge difference, but if I sort of hold it up, it's basically just water. Okay, that's the, I'm getting splashed with chicken juice, quite disgusting really. That's the ordinary chicken. This one is thicker, like I can see a difference. I don't know if you can actually discern that, but it is a thicker liquid. It's still just a liquid though. I would want to see a little bit of jelly in my finished product. But again, as I said, did I even mention that I use the same amount of water? I think I must have gotten a tangent and I didn't finish my sentence. It does happen from time to time. But I think I was saying with my scientific method that I added the same amount of water per gram of chicken to keep it fair. I don't think I finished that before. This happens. So now I've got our lovely locally produced, I'm trying not to break up the big globs of jelly. Can you see that? I hope this doesn't, I've got a brand new computer. Remember when my computer was dying the other week on my Facebook Live? I got a new one, and so I don't want to put jelly on it. But you can see how beautiful that is. That's our local regeneratively farmed, not organic, but regeneratively farmed chicken. So much gelatin. And so how long did I cook each took? So we did it all exactly the same. We did the same 3 burners on the back of our new stove. And it was just under 2 hours total. So we sauteed, I did it with veggies, sauteed the veggies, threw the whole chicken in, topped with water, and then yeah, it was, I think it's like an hour and a half cooking time after that. So 2 hours total before half an hour before the chicken goes in, or 20 minutes before the chicken goes in with the saute, and an hour and a half after it goes in. Sorry, I'm so tired. Okay, so yeah, so that's how long I cooked it for, but really the same method across the board. And I find that when you cook chicken longer and longer and longer, the gelatin breaks down quite a bit. So you don't need to keep, like lamb shanks you want to cook for like 2-3 hours. Ossobuco is more like, 6-7 hours. Everything has their own like perfect sweet spot with timing. When you're doing slow cooking and bony cuts, we talk at length about this in the program, how to cook all the different cuts. But when it comes to chicken, I think if you keep doing it thinking, oh, I'll get more minerals out of the bones like a regular bone broth, you can overdo it and the gelatin starts to degrade. But what I wanted to say is, when I first started doing bone broth, I was getting good quality chicken, but I wasn't getting this quality chicken. And you become a broth champion when you get better birds, and that's because it comes down to the health of the animal. That is the number one thing. I mean, the number one question when anyone starts making bone broth is, oh, my broth didn't gel, what am I doing wrong? And so we have to go through all, did you cook it for too long? Did you cook it for long enough? Was the water to meat ratio or bones ratio too high? What else was it? Did this happen? Did this happen? We go through the checklist. But the number one reason it fails is because they're not using a bird that has been truly pastured. So pastured is obviously different to free range. It's not a regulated label, but that's a bird that spent the bulk of its life outside with a little bit of shed time. And that's what we want. We want them out there eating the grubs, eating the grass, getting the sunshine, That's what we're after, and that's where you see a huge shift in the amount of collagen produced. So that's how you tell if it's genuinely pasture. There should be oodles of collagen there in your broth. So and yet, I mean, that's it. They're making it from nutrition. That's what they're making it from, and so those nutrients in the bird come to you. It's such common sense, really, but it takes a while to really grasp that you're getting more bang for your buck with better quality produce. So I guess I wanted to talk a little bit about regenerative farming, because I keep referring to it, and I hope I don't spend too long. I'm just going to keep an eye on the time, because I can start talking about this topic and then just not stop. So just say stop if it goes on too long. I'll try and keep it short and sweet. It's a very big topic. We do spend virtually a whole week on it in the program to talk about all the benefits and how to understand it and to know what to look for, what to ask for. But basically, the main principle that I like to communicate is when you have if you're driving through cattle country, or you've probably seen huge herds of cows on big, wide, open plains, and generally it's sort of like short grass, right? And you think, cool, grass-fed, right? But it's short grass, baby grass, and it all looks a bit dry. Or everywhere you look in Australia, if you see pictures of cattle grazing, that's the type of grass that they're on. They're not in lush, knee-deep pastures, and there's a reason for that, because our country has not been looked after ever since we arrived anyway. And so what happened before we got here was that herds of animals would walk the earth. All the bison, buffalo, and other ruminants, they would walk in a herd, and what they do is they come across the land, they mow it all down, they poo all over it, nourish it, and then they don't come back for a long time. And what they do is allow that grass to really rest. And then what happens is this magic. The soil regenerates itself. It's brimming with life. And if you're doing regenerative farming, generally people will have cows go through, and then they have the chickens come through, poke through the manure, break the manure down, eat the bugs, and it all works in this beautiful kind of holistic kind of arrangement. So what happens when grass is fertilized, pruned, and then rested is that it gets really lush and tall. And the thing about tall grass is that it's not just, oh, cool, lush green grass because of the fertilization. What that means, the height of the grass is always a reflection of the depth of the roots. Always. So what we have is you've got really tall, healthy grass, you've got really deep roots. And what that means is that the roots are pulling different and more nutrition than the short roots could possibly ever do. And so that's the main thing that we've got to be aware of, is that when we've got cows or other ruminants or chickens moving along away from their waste, which generally means less disease, they're getting much, 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 much more nutrition from that grass. We can't possibly comprehend the amount of nutrition, because I don't know that many people have actually measured that. I'd love to read science if there is some. But really what we're doing is we're improving the fertility of the soil. And there's a beautiful film called Polyfaces, which details the changes in a patch of land next to Polyface Farm, which is Joel Salatin's farm in America. And that shows you, they basically do a 4-year sort of time lapse. So they come back and they see that just bare ground with really short grass, and in 4 years it's like lush, hundreds of different types of plants and weeds. It's like a whole salad bar. It's not just one type of grass anymore, and it's just this buzzing ecosystem. And the thing is, you can do this anywhere. We look around Australia and it's so dry and desolate, and we can actually transform even a desert into a lush green pasture system by using this kind of regenerative method. It can regenerate the land, it can actually improve the drought conditions and the water cycle and all these other amazing benefits. So it's not just for the nutrition for the animals or the nutrition for us, there's all these other benefits, and I hope I haven't gone too off track. I hope that explains it a little bit better. So there's grass-fed and then there's regenerative, and they're worlds apart. And that's just one technique that is used in the regenerative farming method. So that's just to give you one example. So very passionate about this topic, and I know that they'll be covering that in the Kale versus Cow film, I'm sure. So what next? Okay, so really the color of the meat is the second way. I've talked a little bit about collagen, and the collagen will really be a reflection of how healthy that animal is in the first place. But the color of the meat is something that you probably may not be aware of. We've been programmed since we watched our first Disney film as a toddler, that when we cut into a chicken, it's white in the middle. And when we've watched the Steggles commercials growing up in the 80s and 90s, you can't get the jingle out of your head if you start thinking about Steggles. But you're programmed to think that when you slice open that breast, it flips over and the brown skin reveals this perfectly white breast. White is the sign of a lack of nutrients and lack of flavor, therefore, because nutrients equal flavor, always, always. And so we've just been programmed that like about something that is just, it's so bizarre when you think about it, that that's actually the least nutrient dense type of bird. And what we should be looking at, and I'm just going to warn you, this looks really gross because it's been sitting out for so long. I'm still going to eat it because it's come from a really safe farm that I'm really happy with, but it looks kind of disgusting. And when you first pull it apart, a chicken should look, it should look pink. So even the white meat should look pink. And what happens after the pink, I've learnt today, is when it's really pink and red in the middle, you pull it back and then it dries out a bit, it just goes really dark brown. So it's no longer pink. I wanted to show you how pink it was, and I pulled it apart to try and show you, oh, there's a pink bit and then that went brown. There's another pink bit and it all has gone brown. So can you see, I don't know if you can see that particularly well, that it's very, very dark meat and the bones are also dark. I hope you can see that. I don't know if it's coming out very particularly well, but when you pull it apart, it doesn't look like anything that we have grown up with. And the first time my husband cooked a really good quality chicken, it was actually rather hilarious. We did end up having a bit of an argument because I was really hungry and I'm really fussy and I like food to, be moist and tender. But he cooked it, he put it in the oven, and then my method, obviously most people test, I don't know if maybe it's not the majority, but most people, I think, pick up the bird, let the juices run out, and if they're clear, it's ready. That's the way that I've always tested it, because you don't want to cut into the chicken. If you don't do that, that's the way you should do it. If the juices run clear, it's ready. But what he does is chop the thigh so it flops out, and for me that just lets all the juices out, and that's my favorite part of the chicken. So I don't like that he does that. On this particular bird, he cut one leg off, still pink, shove it back in the oven. Cut the other leg off, still pink, wing, breast, and by the time he got it onto the table, I was starving and hungry. I was really going to be, I'm like, what are you doing? It can't possibly take 2 hours. Totally going off my face because I was starving and hungry. I'm like, what have you done to my chicken? Like, what is this mangled bird? So I'm like, he's like, it's still pink. I don't know if it's cooked. I don't know if it's safe, but go ahead. I'm like, oh, it's from a local farm. Don't care. Just give it to me. And we ate our way through it, and it was still probably more moist than a conventional chicken, I've got to say. But it was certainly not anything to write home about that particular time. But I always stick with the thigh meat, and you can't really mess up thigh meat, can you? Which is why people buy just the thighs. So the thing is, it looks pink the whole time, and so it's actually harder to tell by looking at the meat because it really looks pink, and that's because muscle is vascular tissue. It should look pink, and so should pork. The pork is not a white meat. It should look pink. Good quality pork and chicken should look pink as well, and dark, and pretty much on a conventional bird, you'll notice that the thigh meat is a little bit pink or brown, like the purine rich stuff. That's what pretty much the whole bird should look like. So when you switch to better quality, that's what you can expect to see, is a pink meat even when it's fully cooked, and then when it dries out, obviously sitting out on your table for like 45 minutes, it goes browny grey. I know that now. But yeah, so that's what you're looking for. And I think what it's a reflection of is muscles that have been used. So a bird that's been outside using its muscles, running around, fighting with the other birds, squawking around, flapping, that's a healthy bird. That's what you want to see. You want to see strong, dark muscles. And what strong, dark muscles equal is flavor and nutrition. It's exactly the same with a cow. Whenever you have the muscles that have done the most work, so the rump steak, always a little bit more tough. So you do cook this particular type of chicken slightly differently. You can't just whack it in and do it on high heat like you can with a conventional bird, but it tastes so much better, which is why rump, if you learn how to cook it, has so much more flavor because it's a working muscle. It's not like the fillet steak, which just sits there looking pretty and does nothing. A beautiful tender cut, but no flavor, not as much flavor as a rump steak. So all the secondary cuts are generally the ones that are really tough, harder to cook, but they have all the flavor and all the nutrition. So we talk about that a lot in the program as well. So third way, I hope I haven't been talking for ages. Let me know if I'm boring you, won't you? Bones. Bones are a really good indicator of, it's like another telltale sign, and same with humans as well. If we have weak bones, brittle bones, osteoporosis as we get older, that is the sign of an incorrect diet, which unfortunately we've been advised to eat for the bulk of our lives, so it's not really our fault, it's the government agencies telling us the wrong thing, telling us what the the grain and the dairy and the sugar industries have been telling them to say. So we haven't really eaten the best diet for us. If you go back to traditional cultures, really bone health is a reflection of our diet over our lifetime, and also how sedentary or active we are, because really bones develop from nutrients and from movement. That's pretty much it. Yes, there's some hormonal factors as well, and that's a big one, especially for postmenopausal women. There's other factors involved, but for the most part, if you're a healthy human and you've been living really well, you'll have strong, healthy bones into your old age. So when we came to eat really, beautiful birds over here, but certainly in France, you cannot even think about crunching through the wingtip. Over here, if you get a conventional chicken, or you even go and get I shouldn't say the brand, but into like any of the chicken stores that use free range, chickens, supposedly, outdoor birds should have strong bones, shouldn't they? But they don't. You can crunch through the wing right to that first joint, and sometimes even beyond that. And you can sometimes even break the legs, and they go into like a powdery, crumbly thing. That is not a healthy bird. That's terribly weak bones, and that means a lack of nutrition and a lack of movement and lack of, because we build bone through using them. So that's really important to remember. In France, it was unbelievable. You could not bite through the wingtip. I've never had any chicken on that level before, so that was quite eye-opening. You had to sort of eat around the bone. It was quite sort of fiddly, but it was really interesting to see that that's, in Australia, that this, overall the chicken is really poor quality unless you're buying straight with a local farmer who's doing, generally the heritage birds are stronger and healthier, just genetically, but it's the way that they live as well that really makes a difference. So you can see, I guess when it comes to bang for your buck, if you're buying a good quality bird, yes, they're more expensive, but you're getting more collagen in your bone broth if you're making a slow cook or bone broth meal. You get more minerals in the bones, so you're getting so much more for that money, and that's, I guess, what I'm always trying to communicate: eat less but more, and you still, if you have to pay more, you're getting more nutrients for that money, so it still works out to be sort of neck and neck. You probably might get less calories, but you'll get more nutrition. So I think that's all I wanted to say on the topic. We spend a whole module covering all this sort of stuff in great detail. In the program, we talk about how to, I guess, source the best food, exactly which questions to ask, so that you can tell if the farmer's on board with the ideas that we're talking about. Not to be too judgmental of farmers. I think we have a long conversation there about all farmers are generally just doing the best that they can, and they might be moving towards a more regenerative method. So it's just about asking questions. I haven't come across any farm that does everything perfectly. Everyone has to pick and choose based on their location and their finances and their area. It's really like what they can access in that area. So it's just asking questions to make sure you feel comfortable with the decisions they're making, and learning how to spot someone who might be maybe not as honest, whether that's a butcher or a farmer or what have you, and how to tell if someone's been taking shortcuts. You can tell that in the food, and there's certain questions you can ask to sort of find that out. So it's really just empowering info that you'll have forever. You can't unlearn this stuff. Once you've learned it, you can't go back, which is not always a good thing, but it is empowering. You can make those choices from a really informed place. So I hope that you will consider joining us if you haven't jumped in already. There's lots of people jumping in right at the last minute, which always happens. And there's tons and tons and tons of questions coming through to us, which is lovely to see, and I love answering, so keep them coming. And I think what I'm going to try and do is do another little Facebook Live just on the program questions that we get asked, because we have tons of people coming through the website at the moment. But keep doing that. If you are on the fence and you just want to ask a few more questions, you're welcome to email me. We've got a chat thing on our website, and I'm more than happy, if you like a chat, I'm more than happy to chat to you on the phone if that's more your thing. I don't mind doing that. I did that a few times last year. So I just don't want anyone to, I guess, miss out, because this is the last chance we have for 2 years, and I know I keep saying it. So if you have any questions about anything I've spoken about today, the quality, the gelatin, the bones, the color of the meat, that sort of thing, please feel free to post them below, and I'll keep answering for you as long as you keep asking. Okay, bye.